Welcome back to another episode of No Shame with Shane, where the takes have no lies, no bias, but most importantly, no shame. Bro, if we didn't know this before, we know it now. The Eagles are the best team in the NFL. Like, if this was up for debate before, if this was a question before, it should be inarguable now. It should be unquestionable now that the Eagles are the best team in the NFL. Like, honestly, the Eagles in this win against the Lions, this gritty win against the Detroit Lions, 16-9. The Eagles proved that they are the best team in the NFL, but especially in the NFC. Like, the Eagles are honestly the only team in the NFL that has absolutely no weaknesses. No weaknesses whatsoever. Like, there's no team in the NFL that poses a bigger threat to the Eagles than the Eagles. I said this before. Like, there is no team that is a greater threat to us than us. Like, it's not the Chiefs. It's not the Colts. It's not the Rams or the Seahawks. It's definitely not the Lions. It's definitely not the Packers. We're seeing this. We're seeing this now. There is no team that poses a bigger threat to the Eagles than the Eagles. The biggest threat to the Eagles this season as a whole has been the play calling. It hasn't been anything external. It's been internal. The play calling has been the biggest threat to the Eagles. And we're seeing now that the play calling is getting better. The offensive play calling, Kevin Patullo's scheme is only getting better. The offense looked much smoother in this game against the Lions. The game plan looked much smoother in this game against the Lions than what we have seen at any other point during this season. That's been the biggest threat to the Eagles has been the play calling. It hasn't been any other team. And the Eagles proved that in this game against the Lions. There was no team that poses a bigger threat to the Birds than the Birds. That's the biggest threat. And honestly, the Eagles showed that they are the only team in the NFL that has absolutely no weaknesses, especially if you look at the NFC. Like, if you look at the top teams in the NFC right now, the Eagles are the only team out of that group that has no weaknesses. You look at the Seahawks, one of the best teams in the NFL. The Seahawks' clear weakness right now is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, even though he's an MVP candidate, he's also a guy that can remind you that he can throw. He's a guy that can have multiple turnovers in a game. He just had 4 picks against the Rams. Their biggest game of the year to this point. At this point, Sam Darnold's folded in the big moments. 4 picks. You look at the Packers. They have a few weaknesses: injuries, play calling, and also Jordan Love, who has 3 game-losing turnovers so far on the season. You look at Chicago right now. It's their weakness is their defense. You look at the Rams. Their weakness is the run game. Is Kyren Williams. Even though he's a talented back, he's a guy that can be a top 5 leader in rushing yards on the season. He's also prone to fumbling the ball in big moments. This season already having 2 lost fumbles in pivotal moments of those games. You look at the Bucs. Injuries on offense have been their clear weakness, but also they have an inconsistent defense. You look at Detroit. We saw what their weakness was against the Eagles. Jared Goff and the play calling. Jared Goff, a quarterback who folds in big moments, who will put up MVP caliber numbers in the regular season, but folds in big moments. And then you also have the play calling. Now that Ben Johnson isn't there and Dan Campbell is taking over the play calling for the offense, we're seeing how big of a weakness, how big of a liability that is to the Lions. The only team that has no weaknesses, especially in the NFC, and those top teams are the Eagles. Every other top team in the NFC right now has a significant weaknesses. Has a significant weakness. Some have multiple weaknesses. The Eagles are the only team in that group in the NFC out of the elite teams in the NFL and the NFC that don't have a significant weakness. And honestly, speaking of Detroit's play calling, I don't want to hear anything else about Dan Campbell being a better coach than Nick Sirianni. There's like that narrative has to stop. Dan Campbell does absolutely nothing better than Nick Sirianni, and he showed that in this game. People thought, oh, well, Dan Campbell can be a play caller. Dan Campbell knows how to orchestrate a unit. He definitely cannot orchestrate an offense. Like, I don't know whose idea that was out of the Lions front office. I don't know who came up with that plan, but it's not working. It's absolutely not working. This Lions offense right now looks unorganized. They looked unorganized. They were slow to get to the line of scrimmage to line up. It just the decision making, especially on fourth downs, is terrible. It makes no sense. Like, Dan Campbell's decision making on fourth down has looked very suspect. Like, how many times do you go for it on fourth down and fail before you think about switching things up, before you think about punting the ball to put your defense in a better position to make a stop? Like, the decision making on Dan Campbell's part has been questionable. The tempo has looked questionable, has looked iffy. It just this Lions offense does not look the same. Does not look how they looked last year under Ben Johnson. Like, a Lions offense under Dan Campbell and a Lions offense under Ben Johnson are two different units. There's no way you can tell me that after this game, Dan Campbell is a better coach than Nick Sirianni. There's no way. With all the talent Dan Campbell is, and you can't really say that Dan Campbell does anything better than Nick Sirianni, because if you look at these two guys, both guys have had talented defenses and offenses, have had just overall talented teams. Both guys have had to deal with injuries to their units, but one is a Super Bowl champion and one crapped the bed against the Commanders in the playoffs. Like, one guy has 2 Super Bowl appearances in the past 3 years, one Super Bowl, coming off a Super Bowl win, while the other guy not only can't get to the Super Bowl, but can't even get past the Commanders, a team that they really should have beat, but just couldn't beat Jaden Daniels and a less talented Commanders team. Like, I don't want to hear anything else about Dan Campbell being a better coach than Nick Sirianni, because it doesn't make sense. Well, honestly, like, I look at this game between the Eagles and the Lions, and it honestly, it's made me come to the realization, or honest, not even the realization, because I knew this going in, but it just reinforced my point that this Eagles defense at full strength is the best defense in the NFL. Like, I'm 100% convinced the Eagles defense at full strength is the best defense in the NFL. Like, we haven't seen the Eagles defense at full strength all season. We haven't seen it. Nakobe Dean's been hurt. Nolan Smith has been hurt. We didn't have a guy like Jalen Phillips before 2 weeks ago. The secondary has had a huge hole at that cornerback 2 position. We haven't seen this Eagles defense play at full strength before these last 2 weeks. The Eagles defense at full strength is the best defense in the NFL. Now, the Eagles, of course, didn't always have the best unit in the NFL. That was not the case, from weeks 1 to about 8 or 9. But from week 10 and looking forward, the Eagles have the best defense in the NFL because they are now at full strength. Because Jalen Phillips is now in the mix. Because Nakobe Dean and Nolan Smith are back healthy. The Eagles have the best defense in the NFL moving forward throughout the rest of this regular season. Like, if you look at the last 2 weeks, these last 2 games against the Lions and the Packers, this defense has only allowed 2 touchdowns. This defense has only allowed 1 touchdown per team. You only get 1. Like, offense is seeing this Eagles defense, you only get 1. Like, the Packers and the Lions offenses were completely shut down against this Eagles defense. Like, there was nothing those 2 units could do. Looking at the Lions and the Packers, there's nothing those 2 units could do against this Eagles defense, this fully healthy Eagles defense. The Eagles at full strength on defense, on the defensive side of the ball, are the best unit in the game of football right now moving forward. There's no debating that anymore. Like, looking at the Lions on offense, they were completely shut down by this Eagles defense. Completely shut down. 0 conversions on 4th down. The Lions' run game was held to 74 total yards. Minus it, like if you take away that chunk play, and if you take away that huge chunk play from Jameson Williams, both Amon-Ra and St. Brown would have been held to under 50 receiving yards. Jahmyr Gibbs was their leading receiver, was their leader in receiving yards. The fact that Jahmyr Gibbs was their leader in receiving yards, it says a lot. Like, the run game was shut down, the passing game was shut down. There was nothing this Lions offense could do against a fully healthy Eagles defense. And I don't care that Sam Laporta didn't play. I do not care that Sam Laporta didn't play, because Sam Laporta is not making up that big of a difference. Is not making that big of a difference against a fully healthy Eagles defense. He's not making that big of a difference. Sam Laporta in this game, I think we get the same result. The Eagles, with Sam Laporta in the game, the Eagles defense is still completely shutting down this Lions offense. There was nothing this Lions offense could do. The run game was shut down. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery held to 74 total rushing yards. The passing game was shut down. Minus that big chunk play from Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams were both held to under 50 receiving yards. There was nothing the offense could do against a fully healthy Eagles team. Absolutely nothing. And honestly, looking at how dominant this defense has been within these past 2 weeks, it honestly just shows you how big of a difference Jaelan Phillips, Nolan Smith, and Nakobe Dean make for this defense. Like, it shows you how impactful those 3 guys are. Just the world's difference that they make for this unit. Like, having those 3 guys back in this unit, like, it's a totally different defense now. Like, this defense with JP, Nakobe Dean, and Nolan Smith in the fold is a totally different defense than what we have seen earlier on in this season. Jaelan Phillips against the Lions, 1 sack, 2 TFLs, 2 QB hits, 4 pressures, 5 tackles. Nakobe Dean, 1 sack, 1 TFL, 2 QB hits, bullying David Montgomery. Jaelan Phillips bullying Penei Sewell. Nolan Smith, while not having a flashy game, just his presence as an edge setter is something that this D-line has missed for most of the regular season so far. Having those 3 guys back in the fold, it means the world for this defensive unit going forward. It means the world. Like, there's nothing this honestly, with those 3 back in the fold, this defense is unstoppable. Simply put, this defense is unstoppable the way it's currently constructed. Like, first of all, looking at Nakobe Dean took his starting job back expeditiously. and that says a lot, considering Jahad Campbell is a defensive rookie of the year candidate this year. The fact that Nakobe Dean, missing a good chunk of the season, was able to come in week 9 and 10 and take his starting job back from a rookie that was really lighting it up for us. That really just shows you how good Nakobe Dean has looked since being healthy. It shows you how dominant Nakobe Dean has been at that linebacker position. Nakobe Dean is just a different beast. Like, and honestly, we're going to have to start having uncomfortable conversations about who is in that elite group in regards to linebackers in the NFL. We're going to have to start having those conversations because of how good Nakobe Dean looks when he's healthy. Looking at how good he looked last year when he was healthy, and just looking at him within this 2-week span, these 2 back-to-back games since he's been healthy and has been in that starting role. Like, Nakobe Dean, honestly, if we're looking at these past 2 weeks, he's really been the best defensive player for the Eagles, aside from Jaelan Phillips and Quinyon Mitchell. Aside from JP and Quinyon and Quintanamo Bay, Nakobe Dean has been the anchor for this defense in these last 2 games. Like, in the last 2 weeks, he's racked up 7 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, 1 forced fumble that turned into a turnover. Like, he's doing it all. Like, he's stopping the run, he's getting home for the sack, he's rushing the passer, but then he's also holding it down in coverage as well. He was playing blanket coverage against Jahmyr Gibbs. He was bullying David Montgomery in the backfield, leading to a sack on Jared Goff. He significantly contributed to containing what's supposed to be the best run attack in the NFL, containing that unit to 74 yards. Nakobe Dean has just been playing at an elite level. He's been playing at an elite level. Like, there's really nothing else to say about that. He's been playing at an elite level. Jaelan Phillips is honestly what this D-line has been missing. Jaelan Phillips is the closer that this D-line has been missing. Like, Jared Goff was significantly uncomfortable throughout that entire game. And that's in big part due to Jaelan Phillips. There was nothing Jared Goff could do in the passing game with the way Jaelan Phillips was on his heels, with the way Jaelan Phillips was collapsing that pocket. Like, Jaelan Phillips has been so impactful as an edge rusher for this Eagles D-line. It's honestly making other guys on the defense look better. Like, Jaelan Phillips doing what he's been doing on this D-line, it's made Jalix Hunt look better. Jaelan Phillips doing what he's been doing on this D-line, it's made Adoree Jackson look better. We know how weak Adoree Jackson has looked this entire season. I don't think it's a coincidence that now that we have Jaelan Phillips doing what he's doing, Adoree Jackson has played two of his best games this season. Like, Jaelan Phillips has made an immediate impact on this defense. And against this game against the Lions was just the latest example of how much of an impact he has, how much of a difference maker he is for this defense. One sack, 2 TFLs, 2 QB hits, 4 pressures, 5 tackles. Jaelan Phillips was doing whatever he wanted to do against the Lions. He was doing whatever he wanted to do. Jaelan Phillips was bullying Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell was little bro to Jaelan Phillips. Jaelan Phillips was big bro to Penei Sewell. Like, the fact that Jaelan Phillips could rush Jared Goff with that type of ease against a guy that is supposed to be one of the best right tackles in the NFL, a guy who you all think is a better right tackle than Lane Johnson. The fact that Jaelan Phillips was able to do what he did against Penei Sewell, against that offensive line, to make Jared Goff that uncomfortable, it honestly just shows you how dominant Jaelan Phillips is and just the potential that he has as an edge rusher in Philly. There's no question Jaelan Phillips has been the best trade of the year so far. There's no question Jaelan Phillips has been the best trade of this year's trade deadline with what we've been seeing these past couple of games. I don't think there's any disputing that anymore. There's no disputing that. And I mean, and we honestly see Jaelan Phillips' impact just on how we've seen Adoree Jackson progress these past couple of games. Like, Adoree Jackson has looked the best he's looked in years. Like, this is honestly the best Adoree Jackson has looked, you could say, during his entire tenure in the NFL. These past 2 games, Adoree Jackson has looked like a different dude. Like, Adoree Jackson in week 10 and 11 looks vastly different than Adoree Jackson in weeks 3, 4, and 5. Like, against Amon-Ra St. Brown, Adoree Jackson only allowed 1 reception, 8 yards off of 5 targets. Like, this is exactly, looking at the way Adoree Jackson has picked it up these past 2 weeks, this is exactly why I said the focus for Howie Roseman in this front office ahead of the trade deadline should be an edge rusher, because the right pass rush can make up for a lacking secondary. That's why I said Howie Roseman should focus on getting an edge rusher as opposed to getting another corner, because of the impact that the right guy, that the right edge rusher, that the right pass rush can have on a secondary. The right pass rush can make up for any lacking secondary. We saw that in our team in 2023 or 2022. We saw that in this Eagles defense of 2022. How dominant that D-line was, putting up historic sack numbers that they did. It made up for the secondary. Looking at that secondary in 2022, whenever that D-line did not get home, did not get a sack, that secondary ranked in the bottom half of the NFL in almost every major category in terms of yards and yards given up. But you would never know that because of how dominant that D-line was, because of how much of an impact that D-line made against opposing offenses. We're seeing a similar impact looking at Jaelan Phillips and Adoree Jackson. We're seeing the same thing happen with Jaelan Phillips and Adoree Jackson. Jaelan Phillips has made Adoree Jackson look like a better corner. Jaelan Phillips has allowed Adoree Jackson to look like a better corner. Like, Adoree Jackson is benefiting from the addition of Jaelan Phillips. I don't think it's coincidence that now that our D-line is getting back to where it was in terms of wreaking havoc on quarterbacks, wreaking havoc on opposing pockets. I don't think it's a coincidence that now that our D-line is getting back to that stature, that we're seeing our secondary play better, that we're seeing Adoree Jackson play better. And that honestly, seeing Adoree Jackson improve the way he's improved, it gives me more faith in this defense, because your defense is only as good as its weakest link. Your defense as a unit is only as good as its weakest link. And for really this entire season, our weakest link has been whoever has been at that cornerback 2 position. Adoree Jackson, Kelee Ringo, those were the weak links of this defense. But now that our weak link is looking the way he's looking, now that Adoree Jackson is only against one of the best slot receivers in the NFL, one of the best overall receivers in the NFL, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, our weak link is only allowing one catch for 8 yards on that guy. The fact that our weak link is playing at that level, it gives me so much more faith in our defense, because now it just shows that this defense truly has no weaknesses at this point. It has no weaknesses. And honestly, I think it goes without saying the defense is vastly outplaying the offense. Vastly outplaying the offense. Like, AJ Brown was 100% right in what he's been saying online. The offense has not been carrying its weight in comparison to the defense. It hasn't. It's like the offense has significantly struggled where the defense has prevailed and succeeded. But seeing the way AJ Brown was involved in the offense early against the Lions, it does give me more faith in the offense as well. Like, I liked the fact that Kevin Patullo and Jalen Hurts were very intentional in getting AJ Brown more targets earlier on in the game. Like, to me, the fact that AJ Brown was able to tie his career high for first half receiving yards that's a good sign to me. That is a good sign to me. Like, I was very comforted in the intentional targets that went in AJ Brown's direction because of how this game plan has struggled, this season. That's something that made me feel good. Like, the defense, no question. Like, with AJ Brown being involved earlier on in this offense, that'll allow the offense to sort of bridge that gap between how the offense is playing and how the defense is playing. There's no question the defense has outperformed this offense. The defense has only allowed 2 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. The offense has only scored 2 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. There's no question something on the offense needs to improve. AJ Brown was 100% right. The offense does have to do its part. And the first step to that the first step in improving that offense is getting AJ Brown the ball earlier on. And that's what we saw them do against the Lions. We saw Kevin Patullo be intentional with scheming AJ Brown open, with scheming him open more, with getting him more involved in the game plan. We saw Jalen Hurts, even though a few of those throws were a little forced towards AJ Brown, we saw Jalen Hurts being intentional and wanting to get the ball in AJ Brown's direction. I think that's a promising sign, and I think it's only going to get better from here because the offensive game plan as a whole against the Lions, that's honestly the smoothest this offense has looked this entire season. The balance of utilizing Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby in the run game, while also making sure we're keeping AJ Brown involved in attacking what was really an injured secondary as well in the Lions, attacking that secondary with AJ Brown. Taking advantage of the one-on-one matchups in the single coverage situations that AJ Brown had, taking advantage of those opportunities, it was a good sign to me. Like, this is honestly the smoothest the game plan has looked. Kevin Patullo was in his bag. Kevin Patullo was definitely in his bag in terms of his game plan for this Lions game, with how he had a balance of utilizing the run game, utilizing our weapons in the run game, and Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby, but then also trying to take advantage of the one-on-one matchups and situations that AJ Brown had, taking advantage of the opportunities against single coverage that AJ Brown had. I'm telling you, if Kevin Patullo keeps this up, if he can keep building off of that progress, the progress he showed against the Lions, the progress he showed against the Packers last week, the progress he displayed against the Giants before the bye week. If Kevin Patullo can keep building and keep sort of building off that foundation, building off that complexity and balance, there's no question this offense is going to just keep improving. There's no question this offense is going to just continue to become more and more dangerous week after week with how Kevin Patullo has improved his strategy. There's no question. And honestly, it says a lot, the fact that the Eagles are still the best team in the NFL with the way the offense is playing. Like, the Eagles are the best team in the NFL, and the offense hasn't even been playing that great. The Eagles right now look unbeatable, and the offense hasn't even been eye-popping. Imagine what this Eagles team will look like once the offense starts clicking. Imagine what this Eagles team will look like once AJ Brown is able to get a bona fide role in the offense than what he's had this season. Imagine what this team will look like once the offense has a more consistent balance between the run game and the passing game. Like, imagine what this offense will look like once Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are able to connect on a more consistent basis. The fact that the Eagles look as unbeatable as they do right now when the offense isn't even playing that great, there's no question the sky is the limit for how good this Eagles team can look as a whole once the offense gets moving, once the offense gets clicking. And, I was told, speaking of the offense, I was told that the Lions run game was better than the Eagles run game. I was told that the Lions run game would outplay the Lions. I was told that the Lions run game would outplay the Eagles run game. The Eagles run game definitely outplayed the Lions run game. The Eagles run game was much more potent than that of the Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the tandem that's supposed to be the best running back duo in the NFL, they were contained to 74 total yards, 74 combined yards against the Eagles. Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby, they combined for 117. 117 yards against a Lions defense that is a top 10 run defense. Really a top 8 run defense in the NFL. The fact that Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby did what they did, outplaying the Lions run game the way that they did, we got to start. When are we going to start having conversations about who, in fact, has the best run game between the Eagles and the Lions? I know how dominant Jahmyr Gibbs has been this season. I know how good of a number 2 option David Montgomery is. But if we have a full season with Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby together on the same team, if we have a full season with those two together, who's to say Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby couldn't put up more numbers on the ground than Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery? The Eagles' run game definitely outplayed this Lions' run game on Sunday night. And speaking of which, kind of staying on the offense real quick, Jalen Hurts, right? I think it's crazy how Jalen Hurts will get more hate for throwing for under 200 yards and no turnovers than an MVP candidate in Sam Darnold will get for throwing 4 picks in the biggest game of their regular season so far. Like, I think that's honestly crazy to me. The fact that Jalen Hurts will get booed and hated on by Hurts haters for literally taking care of the football, but a guy like Sam Darnold, who is a top 5 MVP candidate this year, won't get nearly as much criticism for having 4 turnovers in a primetime game, in a game that has significant weight. That's honestly crazy to me. Like, you guys will judge Jalen Hurts for not putting up big numbers when he has the talented skill players around him that he does, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. But when it comes to Sam Darnold, a guy who is an MVP candidate, a guy who has what could be the best receiver trio in the NFL in Jackson Smith-Njigba, an Offensive Player of the Year candidate, Cooper Kupp, a former Super Bowl MVP, and Rashid Shaheed, one of the fastest, most explosive deep threat receivers in the NFL right now. With those guys on the field, he throws 4 picks. Like, it honestly makes no sense to me. Like, we gotta really sit down and talk about how that makes sense in terms of how Jalen Hurts will get judged for taking care of the ball and not putting up flashy numbers with the talent he has. But Sam Darnold won't get nearly as much criticism for putting up significantly less numbers, having a significantly worse game with the same caliber of talent around him. It honestly makes no sense. And it honestly reinforces my point that the lows for Jalen Hurts are not the same as lows for other guys in the NFL. Like, the lows for Jalen Hurts are not nearly as low as the lows for other guys in the NFL, like Sam Darnold. The guys who are praised for putting up flashy numbers in the regular season. The guys who were called better than Jalen Hurts because of their high volume in numbers during the regular season. It's hard to not acknowledge the levels when, sure, you'll have a guy like Sam Darnold who can lead the league in passing yards, will have huge numbers through the air, MVP caliber season. But then he's also the same guy that'll have 4 turnovers in a critical game in the NFC, in a critical conference rival game. Jalen Hurts, even though he may not put up flashy numbers week in and week out, he's going to take care of the ball and he's going to win games. If you ask me who I would rather have as my quarterback, I would rather the guy who plays better in big time moments, who wins the big time games and delivers championships, as opposed to the guy who puts up flashy numbers. It's honestly crazy to me, the different level of criticism that people provide to different guys. It honestly makes no sense to me. But that's all for today's edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms, and I will be back later on with more shameless takes.